All China Youth Federation representatives, Yu Qing, Deputy Director of the International Department, China University Media Union representatives, Mr. Zhang Kun, Vice President of the China Youth Daily, and Ms. Jill Collins, Council of Public Affairs and Culture, Australian Embassy, Beijing. Today is a special occasion. After many late nights, an honours thesis that is already 2 months behind schedule, sorry Richard, and an increasingly apparent caffeine addiction, it's a great pleasure and to some extent a relief to be here today. Today is day one of the first ever, but certainly not the last, Australia-China Youth Dialogue. A gathering of 30 leading young Chinese and Australians aged between 18 to 30, we have managed to draw together an eclectic mix of young women and men, undergraduates, postgraduates, and young professionals from both the public and private sector. Over the course of the following 3 days, the delegates will have a unique opportunity to engage in robust and constructive exchange. Discussion will centre on shared issues and challenges, be they political, cultural, economic, environmental, that our respective nations' youth face this century and beyond. We hope that the dialogue will provide a public interest platform to discover where young Australians and Chinese are in agreement, where we encounter disagreement, and the reasons underlying our perspectives and approaches to a range of issues. In short, the dialogue will deepen the delegates' mutual understanding and appreciation of each other's cultures and diverse perspectives. Most importantly, the dialogue is an opportunity to engage in meaningful cross-cultural exchange. It is an occasion to develop lifelong friendships and deepen Sino-Australian people-to-people linkages. This youth dialogue is fortunate because we will have the opportunity of listening to and interacting with a range of experts drawn from the highest ranks of Chinese and Australian academia, government, and the private sector to help delegates understand and grapple with cutting-edge issues that face the region. As such, in recognition of the youth dialogue's public interest value to both Sino-Australian relations, the ACYD team will document, as you can see with the two cameras and our cameraman here, all of the guest speaker presentations through film and audio. The ACYD team will aim to transcribe all the key speeches and post these onto the website in English and Chinese shortly after the dialogue. Breakout sessions, however, will not be recorded because we want to promote uninhibited discussion. We hope that at the end of the dialogue, we are able to produce and share with those who could not be here today a comprehensive information resource. Moreover, after the dialogue, we hope to produce a post-dialogue report outlining key issues raised, areas of agreement, disagreement, and the rationale for areas where more work is needed. The genesis of the dialogue begins with an article Australia's first ambassador to China, Dr. Stephen Fitzgerald, wrote in the East Asian Forum in September 2009. The thrust of Dr. Fitzgerald's piece was that Australia lacks sufficient institutionalised dialogue with our #1 trading partner and regional power, China. How is it that Australia can have an Australia-America leadership dialogue and an Australia-Israel leadership forum, but no equivalent track 1.5 or track 2 dialogue with China? After all, institutionalised dialogue provides, and I quote, a vehicle for problem airing and the spin-off relationships that go with it. In light of this, and rather audaciously, the Australia-China Youth Association thought we would try and give it a shot to create the first ever Australia-China Youth Dialogue, to set a precedent for the grown-ups to follow, so to speak. With barely a cent to our name, this is going to be a challenge for a rabble of undergraduate students to put together. However, from a brainstorming meeting at God's Cafe, one spring afternoon at the Australian National University, who would have thought that over 7 months later, a then abstract idea would transform into concrete reality? We persevered, and here we find ourselves today at Council M, Beijing, for the inaugural Australia-China Youth Dialogue. Without our event partners, event sponsors, affiliate partners, and the combined mentoring efforts of Ms. Philippa Jones and Professor David Kelly, we could not have made it this far. First, the Australia-China Youth Association and the Youth Dialogue would like to formally thank our event partners, the All China Youth Federation, and the China University Media Union. We are delighted to have the opportunity of working with the All China Youth Federation and the China University Media Union. Moreover, we are deeply honoured to be included in the All China Youth Federation's Dialogue with the World project, a first-class public interest initiative. The Dialogue with the World is a series of ambitious bilateral youth forums between the youth of China and the world. Successful past youth dialogues that have been hosted under the banner of the Dialogue with the World series have included the China-US Ivy League Exchange, the China-UK Young Leaders Dialogue, and the China Young Leaders Meet David Miliband Dialogue. The Australia-China Youth Association looks forward to developing a win-win, mutually beneficial relationship with the All China Youth Federation and the China University Media Union over the course of this dialogue and the following years to come. Second, the Youth Dialogue would like to express sincere thanks to our major event sponsors. That is, the Australia-China Council of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, for approving our funding application, and particularly Ms. Rachel Cunliffe for her patience throughout our funding application process. The Australian National University, and particularly Vice Chancellor and President, Professor Ian Chubb, Dean of the College of Asia and the Pacific, Professor Andrew McIntyre, Director of the ANU Australian Centre on China in the World, Professor Jeremy Barmaid, and Executive Director of the ANU China Institute, Dr. Richard Rigby, for their generosity with time, patience, and ongoing mentoring. Gilbert and Tobin lawyers, where special thanks must be expressed to Mr. Danny Gilbert and Mr. Peter Waters for recognising the long-term public interest value of this initiative. Despite an absence of immediate financial dividends the Youth Dialogue may realise, the long-term broad public benefit will exceed any short-term public financial return on investment. Last but not least, China Eastern Airlines and Shanghai Jiao Tong University for their generous support. To our major event sponsors, the Australia-China Youth Association looks forward to staying in touch and working together for future dialogues. Third, we also sincerely appreciate the support of our associate partners, Adam Coyne and Legal Sachs at the Australian Pavilion, Shanghai World Expo, Mr. Dai Chang Lan and Mr. Zheng Kun, the China Youth Daily, Amanda Barry and Jill Collins at the Imagine Australia team, Paul Glasson and Laurie Piercy at the Australia-China Business Council, who've really upped the ante in Sino-Australian commercial relations over the past 2 years. Ed Smith and Morocco Walker at the Australia-China Alumni Association, Michelle Garneau and the team at the M Group, namely Capital M Beijing and Glamour Bar Shanghai, the team at China Policy Research, and of course the ACU team, both in Australia and Beijing, who are working tirelessly over these last 7 months. And last but not least, the Association of Students for International Communication at Tsinghua University. Again, special thanks must also be expressed to Ms. Philippa Jones and David Kelly for their gracious support, mentoring, fantastic homemade cakes, and the belief in the dialogue. In conclusion, the dynamic of political and economic power in the Asia Pacific is shifting to East Asia, and specifically China. Together, as young Chinese and Australians sharing an increasingly independent and complex world, we also share an equal stake in preserving a stable, sustainable and prosperous Asia-Pacific region. Dialogue between leading young Chinese and Australians can provide unique insights into the mix of challenges our future leaders will need to overcome over the course of this century and beyond. Therefore, dialogue between the youth from China and Australia, central actors in the region's affairs, is an endeavour that deserves the ongoing support of both the Australian and Chinese governments, leading academic institutions and their respective private sectors, especially the resource and financial services sectors, which have strong vested interest in stable Sino-Australian relations. In sum, we hope that the Australia-China Youth Dialogue will be the first of many bilateral youth dialogues between our two nations, to be conducted both in the People's Republic of China and next year, we hope, in Australia. In the meantime, on behalf of the ACU and the ACYD team, we hope that you can enjoy this exciting lineup, guest speakers, roundtables and networking events in the coming 3 days. And just on a separate note, while I'm on the topic of long-term dialogue and harmonious relations, there are actually 3 people that have just been recently married who are involved in the dialogue. Firstly, Eric Cole at Capital M, who's here. Jeremy Goldcorn, who's about to be married in a couple of days. And Chen Ming from the China University Media Union. So congratulations to them.